On the 16th of April 2025, scientists reported a high probability that they had found signs of life on another planet. And no, this isn't the start to a sci-fi story. This is real. The planet in question is K2-18b, a planet more than twice the size of ours, located a mere 124 light-years away from Earth. Two chemicals, dimethyl sulfide and dimethyl disulfide, were spotted in the atmosphere of K2-18b thanks to spectroscopic readings taken by the powerful James Webb Space Telescope. Why does this matter? On Earth, these chemicals are only produced by living things, generated as waste by bacteria and phytoplankton. There were over 20 times more of these gases on K2-18b than we see even on Earth, and they were identified with a 99.7% confidence. So this result is perhaps the strongest sign yet that we are not alone in the universe. There's a very real chance that K2-18b is teeming with life. Of course, the universe is a vast place, and perhaps there is another explanation for the presence of these chemicals. This does not prove aliens for sure. Still, 124 light-years is not really that far away compared to the rest of the cosmos. If life is really there, which is a mind-boggling thought, it really makes you wonder, how implausible is it that alien life from this kind of planet somehow found its way to Earth? Perhaps the odds are not so out there. At least, so say the United States Congress. Because, according to them, we've known about non-human intelligences for a long time. They are already here, and the US military has been covering it up for decades. I'm Alex McColgan, and you're watching Astrum. And in light of the recent UFO day, it's time to take a closer look at the very real battle raging right now between the US Pentagon and Congress over the alleged existence of alien spacecraft. Congress seems certain that the military is hiding retrieved alien technology, and the Pentagon is not doing a very good job at proving them wrong. But why do I say that? Well, let's start at the beginning. Those of you that are long-time viewers of this channel will remember that back in May 2023, we did a video on the US Congress's resurgence in interest in the topic of UFOs. It's a topic that carries a lot of stigma. People who claim to have seen flying saucers are often treated as a little bit delusional, the whole thing feeling more at home as an urban legend. And yet, in 2021, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence released a report on Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon, UAP, that made the whole thing seem much more mainstream. According to the government report, UAP, a less stigmatized acronym than UFO, but referring to the same sorts of things, were real and were messing with America's Navy pilots. Their frequent appearance in US airspace and training areas clearly pose a significant safety of flight issue and may pose a challenge to US national security. To be exact, they were getting so close to US jets that pilots sometimes had to swerve to avoid them. In 2022, in an open congressional hearing, high-ranking members of Defense and Naval Intelligence told Congress that this was happening frequently enough that it had become important to find out what these things were. This was no easy task, as UAP came in many different varieties, and so presumably required different explanations. Some were drones that followed Navy ships for hours. Some were orbs photographed outside of cockpit windows, and some seemingly exhibited strange flight characteristics that couldn't be accounted for. Incredible top speeds that broke the sound barrier, yet created no sonic boom. Being able to accelerate and turn on a dime in a way no fighter jet could hope to match. Or hovering motionless in the face of high winds, with no visible means of propulsion. It was these that had Congress and the Navy worried. While the others could possibly be explained as enemy spying action or simple weather balloons blown off course, some of these hinted at an intelligent force with a technological advantage over the US, and the Navy had no idea who was operating them or what their intentions were. Congress ordered the Pentagon to create a new department called ARROW, or the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, in July 2022, and tasked them to use a data-driven and scientific approach to figuring out what UAP were. ARROW set to work and quickly identified 510 cases of reported UAPs, such as the curious and inexplicable Mosul orb, which was seen flying over a war zone in Iraq. However, Congress became unsatisfied with the answers that ARROW was giving. ARROW's first hearing in April 2023 downplayed the anomalous aspects of UAP, highlighting that they were likely all perfectly explainable with the right data. To many watching on the sidelines, this answer felt like the continuation of a long history of obfuscation and outright deception that had been going on for years. And their suspicions were seemingly confirmed when David Grush became a whistleblower in 2023, claiming that not only did a part of the military know about UAP, but they had recovered them. David Grush was an intelligence officer who worked in the United States Air Force and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency for 14 years. As far as witnesses go, his character and credentials were impressive. His claim was assessed as credible and urgent by the Inspector General of the Intelligence Committee himself. Grush had little to gain from this. He was signing no book deal, and in his career he risked becoming a pariah. Yet he testified before Congress that, in the course of his duties as an intelligence officer, he had learned of a decades-long UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program being run by members of the US government, without congressional oversight. Ironically, for the methodical intelligence officer Grush, this lack of oversight was what he actually had a problem with. Government money being spent without the government's knowledge. Grush claimed that whistleblowers had gone to ARROW claiming the same thing, and that ARROW had hidden any knowledge of it. Could there be any truth to this? Unfortunately, there's some grounds to be suspicious. The Pentagon has failed every audit of its finances in the 7 years it's been undergoing them, being unable to account for where it spends all its money. So a secret program or two certainly could exist within those gaps. And unfortunately for ARROW, there has been a long history of US government UFO programs hiding facts from the public that made this more plausible. Project Sign, Project Grudge, Project Blue Book, investigations that dated back to 1947 all came under fire for being more designed to downplay UFOs than to investigate them. And these criticisms even came from the scientists who had run them. For example, one night in 1966, police in Ohio spotted an egg-like object over 10 meters across with a cone of light beneath it, flying 100 meters off the ground and glowing brightly enough to illuminate the surrounding area. The object flew over the policeman, stopped, then continued on its way. The police decided to give chase to the egg, but every time they got close, it would dart away, although it would allow them to catch up again, almost like it was waiting for them. In this way, the two policemen chased the object 100 kilometers across 2 states until eventually, just as dawn was arriving, the object shot straight up into the sky. The official report from Project Blue Book? This object was Venus, which had been misidentified by the policeman. An explanation that was hampered when the lead scientist of Project Blue Book, a man named J. Allen Hynek, claimed that he hadn't even been asked his opinion before the department made its announcement. And also, Venus was in the wrong part of the sky for this to make any sense at all, on the horizon rather than overhead, and it was seen at the same time as the object. Some critics labelled Blue Book as the Society for Explaining the Uninvestigated, due to some of the outrageous explanations they asserted for some of what they saw. Feeding into this suspicion of a cover-up were the very real events that took place across 2023 and 2024. You may have heard of the Chinese spy balloon that flew across the US in February 2023 before finally being shot down over the ocean. There are plenty of excellent images of this 60-meter tall balloon, and wreckage was collected from it after just a day. What is harder to find images for are the 3 other objects that were spotted on military radars soon after, which were also shot down. But while the military was quick to provide excellent images of the first balloon, or a Russian jet clipping a US drone just a month later, no images were released of these other 3 by the American government, and despite an intensive hunt, all 3 were never recovered. Canada did release a very grainy image of one of the objects, and a story soon circulated that one of these car-sized floating objects was likely a hobbyist balloon, but the lack of detail surrounding it and the others left many feeling gaslit. Everything is fine. These are explicitly not aliens, but we don't know who they belong to. A similar thing happened in 2023-2024 when drones started appearing over military bases such as Langley or American bases in the UK, where the US were storing nukes or advanced jets. Although these were most often reported in the media as happening in New Jersey, they actually occurred the world over. Here's one that was sighted near Australia in March 2025. It shares a passing resemblance to the one that was seen over New Jersey. While many assumed that this was the work of foreign adversaries such as Russia or China, the government at the time said it was actually authorized by the FAA. But it certainly doesn't seem that way. After all, if the FAA were the ones authorizing the drones flying over sensitive air bases, why did the FAA go as far as to temporarily restrict drone flights as a way of combating them? Why fight yourself? And why weren't the military told? And why were the drones impossible to catch or detect on radar, even in the face of the US military's desire to do so? And why were they shining lights as they flew, almost like they wanted to be seen? Drones the size of SUVs, appearing the world over and evading capture while investigating sensitive military sites, certainly sounds like this is not just the work of hobbyists. Were they technologies belonging to another country? Perhaps. But the secrecy has apparently been enough that Congress is getting fed up with all of the stonewalling. Soon after Grush's testimony, Congress passed a law ordering the Pentagon to hand over all of their files pertaining to UAP, especially anything to do with non-human intelligence or recovered craft. The fact that a bill contains the phrase non-human intelligence passed into law is astounding. The fact that there were efforts to block it is concerning. After all, why try to avoid handing over something unless you actually have it? The Pentagon is now in the process of handing over files, though the full report has not yet been released, and the Pentagon so far denies having any hidden UAP programs. Of course, if you're a secretive government UAP crash retrieval program, you'll likely appreciate a little privacy. Well, good news, whether you're protecting UAP videos on your computer or you want to feel safe as you scour the web for signs the public is onto you, NordVPN, the world's fastest VPN, helps keep your online presence secure from prying eyes like companies and governments thanks to its robust encryption. Who wants all that oversight? Its Threat Protection Pro is independently recognized for being one of the most effective VPNs at detecting scams and hidden malware, having blocked over 300 million scams globally in just the last 3 months alone. Keep those hackers out of your databases. And as a VPN, NordVPN allows you to access content that's region locked, helping you catch up with all your favorite shows. Even the Men in Black need a little downtime. Try NordVPN today by scanning my QR code or following the link in the description below, where you'll get 4 months extra on your subscription. And it's risk-free thanks to their 30-day money-back guarantee. But seriously, if you are watching, tell us where the UFOs are. In the most recent UAP hearing in 2024, members of Congress claimed that they were facing opposition to having these hearings, and the Pentagon was refusing to hand over data such as satellite footage. And yet, more and more high-ranking, current or retired military officers are coming out and repeating this same story. Admirals, NASA administrators, again and again, the claim is coming forward that members of the government are hiding something. The recent congressional hearing even put a name to this secret program, Immaculate Constellation, and claimed that military servicemen actually have been hurt from the interaction with UAPs, and that was one of the milder claims. In the Immaculate Constellation report, there are accounts of F-22 jets being boxed in by a flight of 3 to 6 orb UAPs, which perfectly remained in formation with the helpless jet before ultimately driving it from the mission area. Another describes a softly glowing orange orb that approached a US vessel, causing those who watched it to experience altered perceptions of time. When it left, the crew snapped out of a trance before feeling a sweeping wave of profound unease. One last account describes a 200 to 400 meter wide saucer UAP that was seen on infrared satellite footage skimming above thick cloud cover. Apparently noticing it was detected, this football field-sized behemoth then dipped below the clouds again, vanishing from sight. Sadly, other than the report itself, there was no proof given that any of this was actually true. No footage, no testimony. But just as the script for this video was being finalized, ufologist Jeremy Corbell released a purported Air Force UAP video taken by an infrared satellite, and it bears a passing resemblance to one of the Immaculate Constellation accounts. Take a look at this. Here, the object is moving down from the top of the screen before veering to the right. From the size of the clouds, it is clearly a massive sphere or disk, but its 90-degree change in direction suggests it's no balloon or an object blowing in the wind. If Corbell is correct, and this footage is real, it lines up perfectly with the Immaculate Constellation claim of the Behemoth UAP. I also did find at least one instance of a podcast made in collaboration with NASA where the subject was UAP. Ecosystemic Futures positions itself as a conversation with the experts at the cutting edge of technology in the quest for innovation. The whole podcast episode 69 if you're curious, was an interesting dive into possible emerging tech. But without going into everything that was discussed, one of the guests, Richard Van Durik, a former electrical engineer and mathematician, and now CEO of Field Propulsion Technologies, very casually claimed to have been part of a public sector UAP reverse engineering company. He described smart materials that he had been tasked to investigate that turned to dust if you interacted with them. If alien craft exist, they apparently don't want their technology reverse engineered, it seems. And he calmly detailed his attempts to study triangular UAP that could turn invisible at will. His claims in this podcast were taken as completely reasonable. And while it's easy to make claims like this, the setting the claims were being made in was the surprising part. I hadn't expected NASA to collaborate on a podcast that had guests making claims of this nature, as it implied a subtle, tacit approval for what was being said. Sadly, Congress has not published its own proof of its Immaculate Constellation claim, and here we reach the end of what can be found in the public congressional record. So, let's take a moment to review. Judging by their complaints, and in a rare case of bipartisan feeling, members of Congress are uniting in the apparent belief that their own military is hiding something from them. Of course, they are privy to things we cannot see, so whether you believe them or not comes down to how much faith you put in their interpretation of those classified documents and videos and their own agendas. But it is certainly true that there are objects in our skies that we cannot explain. Although not necessarily aliens, there are unusual craft in our skies, and if the government knows what they are certainly not telling us. Whistleblowers have made claims that some of these are non-human. Of course, witness testimony is the worst kind of evidence. People can misremember things or interpret what they saw according to their own biases, if they're not outright lying. But another proof is lacking. While there are military videos that have been released that show something, none of these are the high levels of fidelity that we know the military is capable of, which is a little frustrating. But for certain, we have no UFO lands next to the White House and alien shakes hands with the president video that settles the question forever. We have the testimony of credible witnesses such as David Grush, but he has only claimed that he was told UAP exist. He never claimed to directly see one. We have evidence of the Pentagon stonewalling and obfuscation. Some of that is to no doubt protect sensitive military assets, either secret new technologies such as US stealth bombers, or sensitive devices that did the data collecting that the Pentagon doesn't want everyone to know that they possess. But while this explanation is good reason to keep it from the public, it's not a good reason to keep it from Congress, who are the ones paying for it all, and Congress are the ones feeling stonewalled. As a side note, while not everyone in Congress is informed about every secret program, a few select congressmen are. The House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. That's how it's supposed to work. These congressmen being read in so that they can oversee what the Pentagon is doing, maintaining a level of secrecy. So if this was all just secret Pentagon technology, all that would be needed is a quiet word in those ears, and those committees could tell the rest of Congress that this was one of ours. Please don't draw attention to it. All this public attention could simply go away. So the explanation that this is secret US tech that the Pentagon isn't telling Congress about doesn't make sense to me. I could buy the idea that the Pentagon does not want to publicly acknowledge they don't know what this is, or that another country has a technological advantage over the US for fear of inciting panic, but that is straying into speculation. When the facts are reviewed together, it certainly feels like something is going on. To sum it up in the words of the then Senator Marco Rubio, either what the whistleblowers are saying is partially true or entirely true, he said, or we have some really smart, educated people with high clearances and very important positions in our government who are crazy and are leading us on a goose chase. There is not a clear reason why many of these whistleblowers, who are actively serving in distinguished careers, would want to jeopardize their reputations. While some UFO enthusiasts have made money off discussing the topic, people like David Grush had no book they were trying to sell. Perhaps what would be helpful to hear is evidence from someone who actually was part of the secret government crash retrieval program itself, a whistleblower with footage of what they saw from much closer up. As it happens, we have an example of that. Although, I will warn you, this is both less substantiated and an example of where ufology can get seriously weird. let's talk about Jake Barber. A lot of the big names in UAP circles started making a big fuss back in January 2025 about a big revelation that was about to take place. A whistleblower was coming forward with unprecedented levels of information by the name of Jake Barber. Like Rush, Barber claimed to have worked on classified projects for the government. But unlike Rush, Barber claimed to have been a pilot working within one of those programs. And although he claimed that there was a danger to his life, he felt that the footage and information he held needed to come forward. Congress has not officially vetted Barber, nor do we have proof that he was working on this program at all. Of course, such is the nature of clandestine programs. They are, by nature, difficult to fact check. We should likely take what he says with a grain of salt. However, what he claims is certainly interesting. Barber claimed that he was a pilot who would sometimes transport highly sensitive objects from one location to another. On one such mission, he flew his helicopter to an unspecified patch of desert, only to find a large egg-shaped object there. While approaching this egg to transport it, Barber felt an overwhelming emotion come over him. He felt sadness, happiness, and the feeling that something had connected with him on almost a spiritual level. It was guiding him, and the whole experience was so overwhelming that he began to cry. He pulled himself together and continued the mission. Later, he claims that other personnel confirmed to him that what he encountered was a UAP. Apparently, the military transported these egg-shaped UAP often, and this footage came from one of those other missions. And Barber himself claims to have not just encountered UAP once. In a later mission, Barber claimed that exposure to a UAP, or possible reverse engineering technology from a UAP, led a doctor to conclude he was suffering from the hallmarks of radiation poisoning. The doctor in question was Gary Nolan, another ufologist, but one who is a professor in Stanford with an extensive background in immunology and cancer research. Later, Barber left the military and together with other business partners founded the company Skywatcher. Rather than force the military to divulge what it knows in its clandestine programs, Barber is now trying to replicate the results in the private sector. But the method he is using is surprising. He and his team are not just using cameras or radar, but are attempting to connect to UAP psionically, using their minds to reach out to UAP. In the same way, Barber claims that the first UAP connected with him. According to Barber, there are many people capable of doing this, and for whatever reason, whatever the true nature of UAP, many of them seem to want to be connected to in this way, and if you do it right, they are willing to come out to play. Through a mixture of on-site psychics and the use of an electric signaling device they refer to as a dog whistle, Barber's team claims that they can successfully call UAP to their location with a near 100% success rate, an extraordinarily high number, making this an extraordinarily bold claim. There is footage. It is grainy, and when I look at them, at least a couple seem likely to be birds or balloons. But this tactic of psionics and dog whistles is the method that Barber claims the US government is using, and is the way that the first UAP egg was called down to land in the first place. I've often heard the argument that if UAP are so advanced, why do they keep crashing on Earth? This, allegedly, is the answer. What evidence do we have that this is true? Well, it is a documented fact that the CIA did run a psionics program running from 1975 to 1995 called Project Stargate. CIA agents recruited those who were psychically gifted and attempted to use them to remotely view targets of interest amid fears that the Russians were doing the same. While this might sound extremely out there, consider that, unlike the UFO projects Sign or Grudge, which only ran for a few years, Stargate went on for 20 years. That implies they felt they were onto something. They also did claim some successes. Former President Jimmy Carter spoke of an incident where a crashed plane went down in Central Africa. American satellites couldn't locate it, but apparently a remote viewer was able to do so. After going into a trance, the woman wrote down some coordinates, and there the plane was. Whatever you think of the truth behind psychics and remote viewing, the idea that the American government also attempted to reach out to UAP using psionics is actually pretty believable. What's a lot harder to swallow is the idea that UAP responded. Still, a good scientist does not dismiss something simply because it seems outside our comfortable worldview. So, in an effort to be scientifically rigorous, I decided to test the hypothesis for myself. Together with my brother Jon, who helped write the script for this video, we set out to call down a UAP using this method. We travelled down to the coastline of South Wales, as some reports associate UAP with large bodies of water, and we hoped that there wouldn't be too many people around. The weather was cloudy, but there were large patches of blue sky as the day progressed. The method we were using was something known as CE5. Apparently Barbara is not the only person out there claiming UAP can be contacted psionically, but there are many who say the same, and there is a whole published methodology explaining how to do it. There's some variation in the execution, but the idea is simple. Meditate, clear your mind, then in a spirit of goodwill, ask mentally for UAP to come to you. We went during the day, as we hoped to catch better images than just a little light in the sky. To that end, I brought along my Sony A1 camera with a 600mm lens. Jon was going to be our psychic for this attempt. He had never done something like this before, but was willing to give it a try, and I would capture an encounter, if anything happened, on film. We set up our camp. Jon got to meditating, and we began to wait. We didn't talk much. We kept our eyes on the sky and the horizon. Apparently, it's all about the headspace you're in, and although I did find myself a little skeptical that anything would actually happen, I did try my best to keep an open mind. And after a few hours of waiting, we found nothing. No spheres or triangles in the sky. No outrageously fast spacecraft, not even any balloons. Although I did capture a few nice images of some birds, which is the real reason I bought that camera in the first place. I'll admit, we were both a little disappointed, and I went down to the beach to look for rocks of interest. Jon stayed out another half an hour longer, but eventually even he faced the reality of the experiment's failure. It would have been cool to see an alien spacecraft, but sadly, this does not actually prove Barbara wrong. It, of course, might just prove that we are not very proficient at the process, or maybe we lack the knack for it, or maybe there was simply no UAP to call. The one thing that did happen that was a little odd was that Jon woke the next day to find he had been surprisingly sunburned. He also had a headache and a resurgence in an eye infection. While this could have been the signs of radiation spewing UAP hovering somewhere just out of sight, I lean towards a good old-fashioned sunstroke. It was a cloudy day, but Jon does burn easily. But I have the same skin as him, and for the record, I was fine. So where do we land with all of this? When it comes down to it, many of the claims surrounding UAP seem to boil down to a question of belief. A majority of Congress believes Grush, who in turn believes his sources. Barbara believes that you can psychically connect to UAP. Arrow believes that what lies in the unknown is innocuous. Every example of an inexplicably fast UAP is actually a sensor error, or just an optical illusion at work, but that's just it. This is anomalous. It exists at the edge of our senses, in the files of secret government agencies we suspect exist. Could it be true? Absolutely. But could it all genuinely prove to be nothing more than an unexpected balloon, or a hoax, or some emergent technology that one branch of the American government isn't telling another about? Also, absolutely. Until we shine more light on it all, it's really hard to know the truth either way. All you have is probabilities. At the beginning of this video, I told you that we probably have found signs of life on another planet. This too is an unknown. I find the idea of life being out there somewhere exciting and fascinating. The idea that some of that life has found its way here, it could revolutionize everything. But it's important to exercise caution and to not let what we want to see cloud our view of what we can say with certainty. The governments of the world are absolutely hiding something. That really shouldn't be a surprise. And there may indeed be a there. But until the mysteries are all finally solved, whether you think the answer to it all is alien craft, or beings from another dimension, or angels and demons, or just ordinary men keeping ordinary secrets, keep an open mind. One day the answer will be revealed. No secret organization can keep the truth suppressed forever, and things exist out there that can always surprise us. Thanks for watching. Making this video required some long-term planning and work, which we were only able to do thanks to the consistency and sustainability of your memberships as Astronauts on Patreon. A huge thank you to everyone who has signed up, and if you'd like us to make more videos like this, you can join with the link down below. When you join, you'll be able to watch the whole video ad-free, see your name in the credits, and submit questions to our team. Meanwhile, click the link to this playlist for more Astrum content. I'll see you next time.